And this is Racey, the podcast where we delve into all things race play and just really discuss all the different ways that, race intersects with these kinky lifestyles, both in and out of the professional world, lifestyle world. And I have the most amazing king here with a lot of his own personal experience. And I would really love for him to introduce himself. Pagan, please, if you would.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here on Racy, the premiere debut episode, where we get to do just that. I am really looking forward to discussing all things race play with, I'm just going to say it for you because she would never say it about herself. The queen of race play, Lady Anaconda, someone I've admired and have been lucky to befriend over the years. I can't think of a better person to do this with. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this and to getting the word out about what race play is, can be, was, all those things, and really explore it in depth a little bit more than what the average media does when they present it. So thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's my privilege and my pleasure. And it is, I think, a really important time to be having these conversations because we've seen such a growth in popularity in, you know, cuckolding, particularly,
Hmm.
quote unquote, interracial cuckolding. Of course, we know
Hmm.
race is a social construct that stems from the belief of white supremacy. So
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's all race is.
Hmm.
Ethnicity is real, but race
Hmm.
really, it isn't. So,
Hmm.
there's a whole lot of levels going on here in terms of how people relate to each other. And, I really want to delve into, the intersection between fantasy and reality. And, a lot of people are really, just seeing what's on social media, maybe not engaging with race play in any way in their own life. So, I just definitely want to provide a platform where people can speak openly, candidly about their opinions on it, their feelings on it, maybe experiences that they've had, good or bad, about it. For anybody who doesn't really, off the top of their heads, understand what race play is, it's typically, it's mostly like a kinky BDSM, interaction. It could be professional or just personal. It could be in a relationship or between, again, a professional and somebody seeking out a desire to, play out a fantasy. So
Hmm.
it's at the end of the day, it's supposed to be consensual play, race play. This isn't just, me walking down the street and calling somebody by a name or anything like that. It's the intentional use of racist scenarios, racial epithets to help construct or maintain the exchange of power dynamics between participants is kind of a general definition for anybody who needs that. And, one of the reasons that I have such a relationship with race play is because I came into the world of being a queen of spades, believing that there wasn't enough acknowledgement of what was kind of going unsaid, which is this obsession with Black power, with Black
Hmm.
bodies, with Black sexuality, with just Blackness in so many different ways, Black culture, and, white privileged people in spaces like, again, I mentioned cuckolding. There's definitely a lot more content with hot wife free going on these days. And a lot of it
Hmm.
centers around a wife, a white husband, and they're submitting to, in some capacity, a Black, I say Black king, because that is what he is. He should be treated as such, especially in that dynamic, because the dynamic wouldn't exist without his presence. But a lot of
Hmm.
people don't see this cuckolding, this hot wife lifestyle as race play. But guess what? It is. And there's lots of other. So if there's any clarification you'd like to give of kind of what your definition of race play is, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
kind of delve into that and kind of go from there.
yeah. I mean, you covered a lot right there in a really short period of time. That really is a great overview. I think like there's um there's the I'll parse out my definition of it two ways. I'll say the dictionary definition that I've come across,
Mhm.
um, quote unquote dictionary definition, and then I'll say what my definition is. But when I um, think about what race play is technically, it is under the BDSM umbrella. It's a type of sexual role play. It involves enacting scenarios that have some kind of a racial element. They could be stereotypes, they could be other things that have a power dynamic, and that's why it's BDSM. And there's often elements there of dominance or humiliation sometimes with that. It's controversial, and I think is because it intersects with real world power dynamics and racial dynamics. And I also would say that race play covers a wide range of scenarios. Um, and, that can include, for instance, the master slave dynamic or scenarios where one person is either humiliated or I would say praised and put on a pedestal because of their race. That also is race play, lest we think it's just one thing. So that's kind of the dictionary definition of it. My definition, if you're playing with race at all, you're in race play.
Mhm.
If you're saying I prefer Asian women, that has a racial element to your play. If you say I prefer black men, there's a racial element to your play. So look at it like a swimming pool. There's a deep end where people are diving and it goes to 14 feet. But even if you're just saying I prefer blah, 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 and there's a racial element, you're dipping your toes in the shallow end of the same pool. We're all in the same pool.
Right.
I want to just say that because sometimes in our spaces, we love to put up these walls of like, well, that person over there that's into that kink, they're different from me because I'm over here, I'm into this kink. And I usually find we're probably more connected than we're different.
Right.
And so I would cover the whole gamut of race play being if you enjoy a racial element to your play, you're into race play.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I want to make that distinction that we are not kink shaming here. There is no, I may have my own personal feelings about what I like, what I'm into, what I am
Hmm.
comfortable with, what I enjoy, what I seek out, what my audience likes, etc. I like to make the distinctions so that people know where I'm coming from. I've always said this. I don't kink shame and nobody else should, because just like anything else, if you expect, to be respected for what your preferences are, you should respect other people. And if you need to learn a little bit about it to be able to get to that place, that's one of the
Hmm.
things we are seeking to do here with Racey. Because I my whole brand is very controversial, and I am not as heavy in lifestyle spaces as, say, you are, King Pagan, or
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
people. But, it is, I have owned cuck submissives that I've caged, and I have an overlap of lifestyle
Hmm.
and professional. Um, so there's just, again, I just want to
Hmm.
reiterate, I may have some moments where I speak candidly about my frustration with certain spaces that I deem being, like people are trying to make them a white safe space above all, because that's
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're white people trying to exist in, you know, this world of privilege that they have. They try to take that privilege with them everywhere. And
Hmm.
even in a space of fantasy play and, consensual fantasy play and supposed play with power dynamics, they still think that there's this entitlement to be, you know, the um the superior player. And that's I think a lot of people, when they hear race play, they immediately think of something that is, I don't want to say negative, but I think that it's kind of unique what we've seen a lot more now with BNWO type of play, where the black man or the black woman is really in control, is really being revered, is really being submitted to, versus,
Hmm.
you know, maybe how it's been more, viewed in the past, or especially in these triple X professional
Yeah.
triple X scenes. There's just
Yeah.
a lot of really, kind of negative energy, to be honest. So
Yeah, yeah. And you would know, because you travel in that space, you create content, you also have some forays, I believe, into just the lifestyle stuff where it's not
Mm,
about creating content. So you've run the
mhm,
gamut. So you've been able to experience it across the board. And just for the audience members who might be unfamiliar with my background, you touched on it. I am more in the lifestyle space. I'm not a content creator. I've been in the lifestyle for over 20 years. So I would say I have a good amount of experience. I've put in my 10,000 hours plus. Um, but the experiences that I have had have been much more interacting with couples, obviously mostly white couples. Um, Interracial is the main thing that I do and I gravitate toward because I love it and I love that dynamic. Interracial, as I said, I consider that to be race play already once you're into that area. So I have also experienced some of what you just described that happens in the content creation and the triple X space. I have experienced it in the lifestyle space too, because let's be honest, because there's a dearth of sexual education, especially in our country, people get their education from the internet, and that usually means porn. That's
right.
why there's so much misinformation out there. You and I laugh as we were like preparing for this about how many people think that race play means, oh, that means you're using the N word. Like there's an equal sign in their head. And I
Mhm,
don't blame them because when they look at the internet, that's what race play means most of the time.
mhm.
It doesn't just mean that, it incorporates that, but it has a wide umbrella it covers. So I also, with my experience, have found what you said to be true. And yeah, that's maybe one of the things that we might want to get into is like, what is the forms it takes? How does it look? And I'm especially interested in that, um, you know, in terms of America.
Mm.
I have learned from some other bulls in the lifestyle, black bulls who have lived abroad, that it takes different forms as they have like traveled in places like Germany or Eastern Europe, and the attraction to black men in these spaces where they have a rare sighting of a black man.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
that's an interesting thing that's a little different, though, a little more nuanced than what American race play looks like, which is really interesting too. But all of this is interesting to me. We could tackle any one of these subjects. I'm down for all of it.
Absolutely. And I was hoping you were gonna lead to that because that is so interesting that there's these other countries that, have a very popular fetish scene, very popular
Hmm.
BDSM. They even have, they're a little more fluid with like what's more acceptable, what people are comfortable with, but there's maybe not as prevalent a black like population.
Yeah,
Like even so
yeah.
there's like America certainly has its own special brand of racism despite all of, this racism, colonization certainly being, this historical
Hmm.
event that we can't overlook, that has led to a
Hmm.
lot of these attitudes being passed down. But it's interesting to me, that
Yeah.
I when I get people talking to me about my brand, being like, "Oh, we need more QoS like you over here," and I'm just like, "Yeah, it's just so interesting that their culture is just different." The
Yeah.
interactions in public are different just because Black people will be like you said, more of a rare sighting. So like how
Yeah.
mentality
And
is.
so, yeah, absolutely. What I've learned is that race play just takes a different form in those countries. They don't have the
Mm,
specific history of transatlantic slave trade, bringing over millions of African bodies, specifically, by the way, chosen for their physical prowess,
mhm,
how big they were. They're chosen to be laborers. So when you pick specimens of Africans specifically and bring them over to one country, there is a fetishization that started off as a business transaction, um, literally looking for sexually proficient and hung black men is part of what America's foundation stones is built on. Germany doesn't have that. Switzerland doesn't have that. But in those countries, what I've learned is their race play takes the form of immigrants. It's
mhm,
whatever immigrants, whatever otherized group of people that may not be black, they may be brown, they may be Muslims, it may be people from Pakistan, it may be. Those are the people, the ones that they have these racial fears around, these titillating whispers behind closed doors about what these men can do to our wives. It
Mhm.
springs from their version of what America has. So it's very interesting. There's a lot of the same there, but America has a very unique history with black men and white women being separated specifically under pain of death, or in some cases, if you know your history, worse than death. You were lucky if it
Right.
was just death.
Mhm.
That charges things in a way that no other country has. I'm sorry. We have just like a level of racial trauma, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode about how trauma can lead to these kinks and how kinks can heal trauma. But we have a certain level of a sin in our past that, frankly, these other countries don't have. So everyone has a version of race play culturally, but it just takes different forms. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, one of these things that's both similar and different is this idea, obviously if you're watching the news, you're paying attention, to American politics. It's this discussion right now of like how the white and again, white in America is this all-encompassing, this is not just one
Hmm.
nationality or ethnicity, like white. The white people, the racist white people in
Yeah.
America are so worried about the great extinction, right? So like
Hmm.
that's you could talk about a country like Germany or Switzerland, or they're all Swiss, they're all German, they're all
Hmm.
Polish. So like their idea of
Hmm.
like this fear of what's going to happen to our culture, what's our future going to look like, what is the demographic going to look like when these different quote unquote races are coming together. And, it's
Hmm.
interesting that that same anxiety is here for white people because we already, this, white people came to this country. This is not a white country, and we're already
Hmm.
so mixed together that like the fact that in 2025 this is still such an anxiety for some people that they're coming to me with this confusion or this white guilt, this frustration, this shame, this inferiority complex. Like I feel like those are the pieces of my interaction with race play that people don't see as much or don't hear about as much because it's like just that's a really charged up kind of thing. Like there's nobody really when they are having these racist feelings and trying to convince themselves of white supremacy, they don't want to hear that there's a bunch of white people, white males specifically, coming to somebody like me admitting that they have white guilt, white shame, and what do I do with these feelings? And like how do I like, because it's different than like what you were saying about racist trauma. It's
Hmm.
it's interesting to think like it almost doesn't feel like the right word to describe what they're going through as, this type of trauma that they want to use BDSM to like work through, but it's very
Hmm.
similar. There's a lot of overlap in the experience and like where they're just looking to put these feelings. And one of the reasons I do what I do is because if somebody's going to come to me like that, I don't want the interaction and what they get out of it to end when, we log off the Skype show or log off the
Hmm.
phone call or, now they're having post nut clarity about, no, no, I don't have shame. But then guess what? Tomorrow they do all over again. They have another spiral about it and they're just like, why do I have these feelings? Like, I try to take an approach to delve into it in a way that not a
Hmm.
lot of people before me have. Cause, for some it is an uncomfortable conversation or they, feel like they're supposed to feel a certain way or be a certain way if they're a white male in,
Hmm.
supposedly white America. So, yeah, it's just, it's re
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It's it is interesting. All of that is, what you just said about white extinction being a driver.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that, you know, we're going to get into in future episodes, maybe more about that subject is, first of all, it's true that it's estimated between 2040 and 2050, sometime in that decade, white people are going to become the minority in America. So that fear
Sometimes I
that we're
think
going to
they
be the
already
min
are. Like, they can't
maybe the
rationalize what that
numbers
so they're
just
just
yeah,
trying to be like, "No, there's still, racist systems in play in our government. We're still on top." It's like, "Yeah, I think
yeah.
we're
Yeah,
already,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, and yeah, I just woke up today to some news about how they're going to be gerrymandering Texas again,
Yes,
so that they
yeah,
can try to keep that majority voter that is predominantly white in power because it's hard for them because there's a lot of brown people that are voting and they're voting
mhm,
legally and they're American citizens and they can't stop it, so they have to
yep,
finagle these ways. So that's been going on literally since people of color could vote and women could vote actually.
right, like,
So
again,
th-
the reality of redlining is, like, that's reality,
yes,
so, like, but the attitudes that come with living in a society that has that type of history, it comes over into fantasy play spaces, it's like, it
absolutely,
does all end up
yeah,
connecting.
and it's yeah, and so I'm pointing that out to say, yeah, that is part of the fuel of it. We are going to be a minority, and we are used to being on top and playing with that dynamic. I've been in many space where there is a husband and wife who are subservient to me as a black king, and I know, just like I'm working out racial issues and traumas and things that I have when I'm in that room with them, they're working out the same stuff. They're working out the mirror version of that, their white supremacy. And by that, I don't necessarily mean them personally, but the fact that they're acknowledging they benefit from it. And they are in this room with me and they're treating me in a way that, frankly, I don't get treated outside that room in America. As soon as I walk out, I got to be careful when the cop pulls me over.
Right,
I'm not going to be put on a pedestal then. But just
mhm,
a few minutes before, I was in a room with two white people who, for lack of a better word, are paying me back for what was done to me
mhm,
sexually, which is kinky as fuck. And many of your listeners' hands just went down to their pants because that is part of the
we already
thing
know.
that is part of the thing that charges the situation. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's such a fascinating subject. Even if you are asexual, the intersection of race, sex, and then as we just brought out, politics. Now,
Mhm,
because politics is racial now. Sorry, not my fault, but we live in America and it's
yep,
racial as fuck what's going on in our politics. And if you don't see that, I'm sorry, then you probably need a stick and some sunglasses to walk down the street because that is what's happening in our current culture. I don't know what's going to be 10 years from now, and it wasn't particularly this way, 15 years ago. But right now, we're in a hotbed where race and politics have entered the fray together. And so when you say race play today, there's an element of this where you could also say politics play is also a
yeah.
sexual dynamic that I've engaged in several times now because there's an overlap. And that's also another toy in my toy box that I can play with. So, yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and again, without, even the, focus on race play itself, I'm certainly not the only one, nor the first to be a dominatrix who is a more liberal-minded person in my personal life, dominating these males that consider themselves more conservative. So like, I even see I should
Hmm.
actually pull it up or have her on or something. There's a woman in the UK that they did an article about how she talks specifically about how she tries to manipulate her conservative submissives to be better,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
submit to her liberal thinking. And and I'm very
Hmm.
curious to talk to her, and I wonder if is it just pure fantasy play in that play space of, no, you're actually going to do this, or you're going to support your community, or you're going to, pay back minorities in some way, or, but does that any of
Yeah.
that energy leave the room? Because that's my pride. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, like,
Yeah.
like, no, you're not going to get to have a video call with me until you read the chapter of the ISIS papers and deal with the fact that your inferiority complex is actually very real and a very shared mentality that you white males have, regardless of, like, whether or not you genuinely believe in white supremacy or not. Like, there is this inferiority complex that you're dealing with in some way, shape, or form. Let's talk about it. It's can't run away from it. It's very real.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you just said. And I wonder if you can expand on that because, in talking to you before, what I find really interesting because we are in different spaces. I'm in the more, I'm usually not in the position of being the more civilian. I'm usually talking about the vanilla people. But in this case,
Right.
I'm doing the more civilian, quote unquote, version of it in the lifestyle, where it's for the, for lack of a better term, it's for the love, not the paycheck. You're not getting like content creation. You're not, monetizing it. You are though, but you are very unique in what you do with the monetization. Like I don't know anyone quite like you, and you can talk about this. Where you put the money and where you prioritize it is very interesting. But also, can you just talk about what it's like for you and how you explore race play and some of the dynamics that you encountered? One that I found was really interesting that I was surprised at, and I think your listeners might be too, is when you sometimes are worshiping a king. And I would think any king would absorb and love that energy, but sometimes they're not even comfortable with that kind of praise
Hmm.
and worship. Can you just talk about all that
Yeah,
and your experience and what you do?
of course. Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting just because when, okay, like to preface, I was living a lifestyle and then my boyfriend, who's now my husband, my king, was the one to tell me there's a whole community out there and you could be doing this professionally, but I have been submissive to Black men and submissive to Black women for a very long time. And I've had that natural desire to be submissive, like even
Mm-hmm.
in spaces that are not sexual, even in ways that are not sexual. And when I started being in a professional capacity, making content based on my very real, behavior, feelings, attitudes, that were prevalent in my lifestyle already, I just naturally would like meet up with, say, certain Black kings that, I thought they understood my brand, knew what I was about, but because I'm not the typical person who calls himself a QoS, like my brand was very, especially in the beginning, very like unique at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, Findom itself was still just kind of like, getting big on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of a race play Findom was not a big, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I would approach them in a way that was just so naturally submissive, even off camera, that, I was asking them about, are you comfortable with me worshiping your feet, kissing your boot, worshiping your feet? Like asking them in general, just like what types of worship they're comfortable with. Like even just the fact that I was trying to do more than just be sexually submissive and, focusing on, how I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
swallow their balls or something. Like some were, I wouldn't say uncomfortable the whole time, most of them, but like some were just a little taken aback. They were,
Mm-hmm.
so openly like telling me like, wow, like the majority of my kind of race play interactions with a white woman is her, saying the N word to me,
Mm-hmm.
and, and while like I had a Black master in college that wanted me, my first ever, he was like my master, like he owned me. And he wanted me to like leave him voicemails, and he wanted me to use the N word, and he said that he would jerk off to those voicemails. And it was something that I've had such a relationship with in my life because I guess I'm not comfortable saying the word whether I have permission or not, and that's kind of how I saw it, was that I was being given permission to use what I considered very, like, hurtful, violent,
Mm-hmm.
language, and that my privilege as a white woman doesn't stop at the door of any room I walk into. I'm always this privileged white woman, and I was just like, I'm not really, it was like I was happy that I was making him happy. I was happy to
Mm-hmm.
obey because I definitely, when I'm in my subspace, I really want to be very obedient and like push myself to like really accommodate. But it was just so, as I grew in it and realizing I just wanted to be very respectful and very
Yeah.
submissive and obedient, but respectful. And then just like interacting with Black men that, and, whether they were pro porn stars or just, content creators, or even, the few times I've been in lifestyle party spaces, they were just so taken aback when I really, like, if I offered to hold their member while peeing or something, because I just think
Yeah.
that that's such a like a unique, I just
Uh,
you shouldn't even have to lift a finger to piss, King. And
oh,
they,
that's amazing. That is amazing.
and I would have, black men just be like, what? Like, just because nobody had ever done it
So
before,
can I pause
or at
you?
least not without being told to, I guess. So yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Okay, so I think this might be beneficial to our listeners because I wanted to just let you keep going, but there's something that I want to just point out here that I
Please.
think, especially people who are trying to understand how to do this ethically, which
Hmm.
is what I think we should all be doing, especially when it comes to these things in BDSM like race play. There's a couple things. Number one, it occurs to me as a black man that we are so not used to being put on a pedestal and praised that part of the reaction you were getting from that black man is something that, for instance, an entitled white guy would be like, yeah, do it, because I'm used to being entitled. I'm used to being
Hmm.
told that I'm special and that I'm superior, and they would just soak that right up. But a black man is, unfortunately, so not used to that that when you were doing that, they were like, what is happening here? What is this? I don't know what's going on. That says a lot about our culture and about why the charge of race play, specifically between black men and white women, is so charged. Because let's be honest, if you say the word race play or interracial, if you just say interracial when it comes to sex, there's a billion combinations of races that could mean interracial. But what do
Hmm.
people think of first? Black, male, white, female. 9 times out of 10. Whether they love it or hate it, that's what they think of first. There's a reason for that. So it's really interesting that these men would, in my opinion, just it's interesting that they're almost rejecting somatically and mentally something that most people would look at as a positive, being
Hmm.
praised, being put on a pedestal. But the
Hmm.
other thing that I wanted to ask you is where you talked about where you started and how using the N word, you realize, okay, well, my master is asking me to do this. So clearly it's not just me as some white girl just wilding out,
Hmm.
but you weren't comfortable with it. Where are you now with that as opposed to where you were then? Are you, for instance, like, yeah, I'm still not, I don't want to do it, or I will do it because I know it's bringing them pleasure, but I'm still not comfortable with it. Where are you in that spectrum now, and how do you handle like the N word if someone that you're trying to please asks for it?
I think for me, it does boil down to that. At the end of the day, I feel like the more I educate myself, the more I can understand how. I mean, just in general, anybody, the more you research about history, about the relationships between different people, you come to understand why somebody could feel the way they do about anything, right? That's the whole
Mm-hmm.
point. Like, we're as humans, like, we have to engage with each other, learn from each other to be able to get as close as possible to understanding somebody else's point of view. Um,
Sure.
so even though and again, because I'm married to a black man, and I'm, very fortunate that he is well read. He likes to educate himself and challenge himself. So like, there's a lot I learned from him, or, just getting an insight into how he sees something. I feel like I can understand a lot of where the trauma comes from for, say black men specifically, living in this country and being like this country that wants to be so white male centric, because
Mm-hmm.
the white male mindset is so fragile, because their ancestors have tried to put themselves up on this pedestal that they didn't. There's no reason to be up there. You're literally operating out of a place of fear of extinction. How could you be superior if you
Mm-hmm.
have if you feel like you have this awareness that extinction is possible? Like, to me,
Mm-hmm.
those don't go together. That doesn't make
Right.
any sense. You should be
Yeah.
like the most. So, and then to have a society that has commodified black talent, black power in so many different ways, but at the same time wants to try and convince black people that they're inferior, while our entire culture is based on being obsessed with what black people create and think and feel and do.
Mm-hmm.
That I am at a place where I don't want to tell a black man how he should feel. So, like, for instance, I have to be honest that with black submissives, when they come to me, I'm like, I'm not comfortable degrading you, whether
Hmm.
about your race or anything else, because I know that you are already ending up in situations where you are not consenting to being degraded, not
Sure.
consenting to being treated a certain way, or living in like literal fear for your life just by existing in this, society that's
Yeah.
so hell bent on
Yeah.
upholding these bullshit, beliefs of white supremacy that I just that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm uncomfortable, with knowing that I'm where is the change in the power dynamic is, for me it's just I'm just being given permission to do something that I could very easily feel just as confident to go out in society and call people the n-word, or do whatever other privileged thing. So it's that's
Yeah.
where my
Yeah.
tough, but at the same time, if a black man wants to be called, you know like we've talked, and I think this is probably a good time for you to maybe delve into a little bit, like the different ways the N word is
Hmm.
used, because for
Yeah.
me, like just the existence of it in the play is hard for me, because I'm like, like I don't, I'm a privileged white woman, and what do we do? Oh my gosh. So this is just real quick. There's the white women on like TikTok and stuff like that doing the Nazi salute and pretending they're doing something else. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to give the timeliness of what we're talking about right now, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
they're,
just,
they're
I'm like,
pulling
okay,
that
you're giving me
Elon Musk at the
permission.
RNC. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that wasn't what that was. Yeah.
There's like a girl
Yeah.
being like, I'm dog momming today, but she's like very like, I'm not going to do it. But she's like, putting her arm up,
Sure.
and like and like I'm cooking, but it's just very
Yeah.
entitled, privileged, delulu behavior. And it's
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't
so
want to mix in with that. And I get that.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I,
like I understand that, like a person in a BDSM consensual play space, especially regarding race play, maybe as a black man or even as a black woman, like they're trying to work through their feelings about something. So for some reason, using that word, or me using that word as a white person, is doing something that they want to experience, interact
yeah.
with. So I'm trying to be open to
Yeah. You're in
providing
the
the
middle.
experience they want, but I don't
Yeah.
I don't get wet using that word. I don't.
Right. Right.
That's
Well, I'm glad,
so
yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about it here because I 1,000% understand. You're in like a conundrum there. Where you're coming
basically.
from is like in your DNA, you're like, I don't think that this feels right, right?
Yeah.
There's ick, as they call it.
Is this
Then,
healthy?
yeah, is this healthy? Then on the other hand, you have a person who's saying, yes, please do this. This is what I want. That sounds very healthy. That's
Right.
consensual. That sounds
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Now,
Right.
the first thing I'll say is just because someone wants something doesn't mean you have to be the one to provide it, right? So
Right.
that's something that all the listeners should know.
Right.
You don't have to do anything. That's the
Absolutely.
opposite of consent.
Right.
But for a woman like you who wants to please a king, I really do understand that conundrum.
Because that's
I
what I
can
want to
give
do. I want to obey. I want to,
yes,
so
yes,
there's two things that odd a little bit. And it's not like oh, well, I want to get hit in the balls, but I don't know if I can take it. Or I want to be choked, but
I
at what
love
point
it.
am I going to have to
Yes,
go red? Like, there's
yes. I love that you brought that up because that's the example I was going to give. That's a great example.
right
I have
there.
dealt with many a cuck couple, right? A cuckoldress and her cuck. And many cucks like to be humiliated either by her, by
Hmm.
me, by both of us in tandem. It's one of my skill sets that I'm very proud of is humiliating a cuck with the wife or on my own, whatever. And many women have the same conundrum that they're going through. I love my husband. I don't want to humiliate him. It feels icky to put him
Hmm.
down,
Hmm.
especially in front of this other guy. I don't know what to do with those feelings. Now, on the other hand, they're like, he wants it more than anything. He's begging me for it. Clearly, I'm not hurting him, but I feel like I am. And that, I think, Lady A, is the thing to wrestle with, figure out, determine where you land. And there's no wrong answer. But I will say this, there's this thing called compersion. There's this thing called empathy. There's this thing where you are looking for the other person's pleasure over your own.
Hmm.
If you can quiet your own thoughts and ask yourself, what do they want? And am I willing to bring them pleasure, even if I have a ton of thoughts about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And that is something that I have seen many of these cuckoldresses do over time. They start off with baby steps. Sometimes they start off by giving me the ball and just saying, like, listen, I can't humiliate my husband, but I heard you're good at it. Would you start it off? And then within weeks, months, sometimes years, they are the queen in the room of humiliation
Hmm.
because they've learned by exercising that muscle. And I would add, pushing themselves and their thoughts to the back and saying, it's
Hmm.
not about me, it's about pleasing. Then you're able to do it because you're focusing on the other person and what they want. But I get it. I get sometimes the woman who never comes around to humiliating because she's just like, I'm sorry, I just can't. That's okay
Hmm.
too.
Yep.
But I will just point out to our listeners, if they're thinking about race play and they're having the same thoughts that you have, if you're listening to your partner and if there's something that they want, there's a version of it where you can get over your feelings about it because you realize, oh, they actually love this and I can
Hmm.
provide them something. And that's my real goal here. My
Yeah.
real goal is to provide pleasure to my partner and they with me. So I get it. I get the conundrum. It's a pickle. But I do think that there are many people I know, I've seen it. There's many people who are able to, over time, say, you know what, I do feel that way, but I've learned in these interactions that I can really provide something healthy for this person that they love.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this too. Most times, I wake up in the morning dominant. That's just my default.
Right.
But I've been in a few situations with the right person at the right time and the right energy where I wasn't the dominant in the room. We're race playing and we're trying stuff out. And I look at this as a literal yin yang symbol.
Hmm.
That black and white is black and white for a reason to me.
Hmm.
And we're filling in the gaps where the other one isn't and vice versa. And there's been times when that yin yang flipped on me and it was extremely pleasurable. And I was
Hmm.
surprised myself as a dom that I wasn't dominant for that whole time. So I will say that I've learned from experience too. Oh, there are many sides to this and many ways to give people pleasure, and just find your own path and see what works for you. And also, don't judge yourself about what you did yesterday because who knows what tomorrow will bring. You might
Mm.
evolve. It sounds like you did from those days back in college till now. You have like a different understanding. So
Yeah.
it takes all
Yeah.
kinds.
And, definitely just the fact that, whether we're talking about back in college or now in, the mix of professional and personal capacity in which I engage in race play, I have, and this is something specific I actually should reference I saw on my timeline the other day. I can't be paid by a white submissive to use that word. So I think
hmm
that's that's kind of my hard line is that I am so open to pleasing, because I am bisexual, but I would say I very much I love submitting to black men, the most.
hmm
And that's like the
hmm
majority of my experiences, just because like with women, I just feel like it's so natural, like that your energies like mix and flow. But like when I'm with a black man, I am submissive, like period.
hmm
And I'm always naturally submissive to black women, but I've had so many relationships where like we meet in the middle sometimes just because we're women. Like it's a different dynamic, but like
hmm
I could never be paid by a white male to use the N word. And I don't even like when they want to talk about, and I'm curious your opinion on, because I don't know how much this is in the lifestyle, this kind of role play, the idea of the black thug. I get a
Mm.
lot of white male submissives, not as much anymore because I think like words out that you can't get me to really
There ain't no
delve
amount
into
of
that.
money, white boys. Ain't no amount of money to get me to do
But
it.
that whole thing of like, especially considering that I get paid just to have political conversations fully dressed. So good luck trying to
Sure.
get me to do some shit I don't want to do just because you think you're waving some money around.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, just like I don't really, I like, talking about, I wish I had a wife and I could bring her to the hood and get her with these black
hmm
thugs. Blah. And it's just,
hmm
these problematic, again, that white centric bullshit that just like they're pretending, oh, I'm obsessed with BBC and I'm obsessed with black supremacy, but you're actually being like super racist, super like in a very like detrimental like kind of like you want to make it like that the woman has to be, and then again, these are the things
Yeah.
that sometimes these guys approach me about, talking about like they want uh me to pretend that I'm being forced, like that I
Hmm.
wouldn't submit to this black man eagerly, genuinely, submissively. They want to put this aura around it of like he's a
Hmm.
black thug gangster who has to like use violence to get his way and get this woman, or and he's taking her from me, like, and if
Yeah.
I'm a cuck, it's because I'm letting him do this. And it's just that white centric bullshit of just like, you're literally talking to me about how you're afraid of extinction and you can't please your wife, but please tell me how this is all about you. Like,
Right.
you're
Right.
lucky to be in the room. You're lucky to still be married. You're lucky to be in the closet. You're lucky to whatever. So it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the some of the interactions that are just like this daily freaking thing that I deal with. And I see these women. I'm curious about your opinion on that and the influx of QoS findoms who may or may not have ever actually dated or had sex with a black man in their life, but they can be
Hmm.
paid as a kink dispenser to hold up a BBC dildo and say all I'm training with this for my black thug this weekend.
Hmm.
Like, did that come from an experience you had with a black man and that's what he wanted you to say? Or is this coming from you're trying to satisfy and work for these white boys and say exactly what they want you to say? Like, who
Yeah.
knows? It
Yeah.
could be
Good
both. I don't
question.
I don't know. This is one of the reasons I have this show, is because I want to talk to people who have different experiences than me, because I feel like I'm all over the board, and I'm curious,
Yeah, yeah. What's interesting is it keeps coming up here, and I think this is just a natural part of human behavior. Sometimes there's the things that you interact with or that come up when you enter the room, but there's also the things that you brought into the room before you got there.
Mm,
Your lens, your experiences, how you've experienced racism, all these things that you bring in as your luggage before you walk into the room. And then there's what happens in the room that's new. And it's really interesting to me. You can never divorce the luggage from, we're all bringing
mhm,
some baggage in.
mhm.
But what's interesting about this, and I think this is a great subject for us because we've laughed a couple of times about how we agree on so much. It's more exciting if you and I have a different opinion on something. And so
Yeah.
like this is like, so buckle up, listeners, because I don't disagree with what you're saying. There's nothing to disagree with. It's an opinion, right?
Mhm.
But I have another lens on this that's different from yours. And it's because I'm in the lifestyle. And
Right.
frankly, because I'm gonna be honest with you, you are no joke, Lady A. Like you are about that life, like for real, for real.
I
Okay.
am.
Many of the things that I'm talking about, they're just toys in my toy box. And I
Mhm.
take my toys out and I play with them and I put
Right.
them back in the box. And then I go about my other life. Whereas you are in many ways living this ideologically anyway, 24/7.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to talk as a guy who has a toy box and I pull stuff out. The thug thing that you were talking about, for instance,
Mhm.
I totally understand where you're coming from because what you're really asking is what's going on with you? Are you really a racist or are
Mhm.
you playing with race? Because that's one of the big questions that this entire show is going to be about over and over, which is do you or can we even suss out the racism from race play? Because there's two different things. Racism is a systemic thing in society that causes oppression. Race play has play in it for a reason. It ain't
Mhm.
oppressive. It actually should be consensual and fun. So how do you find that line? That's where most people, I think, that's their first question when they hear about race play. It's like, whoa, this sounds like it's kissing right up against some shit that's wrong. And the answer is, yeah, the fuck it is.
Mhm.
That's why it's also kinky and fun. Let's talk about CNC as an example. Consensual non-consent, which used to be called rape play, but now it's
Mhm.
called CNC. That is obviously brushing up some shit that's fucked up. So why is that okay? Because consent is in the word, just like with race play.
Mhm.
Can that also be healing to someone who's actually gone through a non-consensual trauma, but then they're in control of a CNC scene?
Mhm.
and they've actually asked for it as a way to heal from a situation they didn't have control over. Studies are not really, from what I can tell, pervasive about this. The
Mm.
data I was looking for, I didn't really find, but there are many psychiatrists, behavioral therapists that posit yes, it is because they've seen it with their patients. That creating these scenes can create healing around a non consensual thing in their past. I would say the same thing applies to race play. Racism causes trauma, full stop.
Mhm.
How, and by the way, just like patriarchy doesn't just damage women, patriarchy damages men.
Mhm.
Patriarchy makes men behave in a way that hurts men. Racism doesn't just hurt the victims of racism on the one side, it hurts the white people doing it. It steals something from your fucking soul when you exercise racism on people. It hurts you too. So both people in the room with race play, the white couple in my instance, and me, are all working some shit out. So when I listen to what you said, I'm like, yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. Now, for me, I'm not taking it, frankly, that seriously. It's it's a situation where I'm pulling out a toy, and if that toy is they want more thug energy, that would be to me like a woman in a consensual non-consent thing saying, I want you to grab me when you come in the room, and I want you to act this way, and I want you to be rough.
Mm.
Both of those could bring ick. I get it. But when a person's asking for it, that's the difference to me. So
Mhm.
if they're asking for that level of roughness or what they perceive as kinky because they were raised in the suburbs and they grew up with this ideological thing about what it's like in the hood and it's a fantasy for them, I'm able to just take it as a fantasy. I'm able
Mhm.
to just take it as that's just another aspect of why are they otherizing me with race? The same way
Mhm.
they're otherizing me with this thug thing. You know, and it's, by the way, a role because I'm not a thug. I mean, I did grow up in the hood, but I wouldn't say I'm literally that. I know way more street motherfuckers than me. And I know some guys in the lifestyle that came from prison that are rough as fuck around the edges. And there's a ton of couples that like them for that reason. So I'm
Mm.
saying all that to
Yeah.
say, I get where you're coming from, but I also feel like there's a version of it where that doesn't equal sign, because I'm very careful as to what I put as an equal sign for people. That doesn't mean that they're coming from a racist place if they ask for a thug thing, even more than if they're asking for a black man or if
Mhm.
they're asking for other things. There's a version of that where that's just their fantasy. All of that said, racists are hidden everywhere. We don't know what people are thinking when they play with us. You don't know what that guy is really thinking that hits you up
Mhm.
and says, I want you to do X, Y, and Z about race. And we can't chase those rabbits down the hole. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Like, we
Mhm.
can't chase every rabbit of what a person's internally. I've been in many rooms, I'm sure, with many couples, and the husband was in the corner jacking his dick and thinking some racist shit. What am I
Mhm.
supposed to do? Climb in his mind and figure that out and make a decision? No. I just have to live ethically. I have to see what they're presenting me
Smack
and then
around
go
like, what the
forward.
fuck are you thinking? What the fuck? Say it. Say it right now. What the fuck are you thinking?
Okay, now you're making me want to do it. Okay, never mind. I want to do it now.
We might have to, get together again. You could direct my
But
scene
yeah,
because that sounds
but
like
you
it'd
know,
actually be a lot of fun.
but sorry for the long answer, but that is one of the differences I think between how we approach this.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And it's something I was reading earlier and this I want to get her name right because I think it was Williams. Milena Williams, who is I believe she's not just a dominatrix, she's a Black BDSM activist, educator, and writer. And she was
Okay.
just talking about she said, my vagina isn't really interested in uplifting the race. What pussy wants is fucked up stuff, really dark scenarios to test the boundaries and cut with an exhilarating level of danger. So,
Mm,
just enjoy. And okay, I love to masturbate in front of a slightly open window. You know,
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
idea of getting caught is very sexy to me until
mm-hmm.
I come, and then I'm like, God damn, these are my
Close the
these are my
window.
old ass neighbors. I don't want them.
Yeah, yeah. But the
So, like, I know
exhibitionism
what
is
she's
turning you
talking about.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So like I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what the feeling is that she, so like, what you were saying
yeah.
earlier with like when it comes to these white cucks that, approach me for content or whatever, and I don't really know what's necessarily going on in their brain, but it's like, the difference, at least in, one example of like the difference between the guy that approaches me and is like, I can't compare with black men. I've known this all my life. I
Hmm.
feel like so pathetic ever pretending that I could satisfy a woman if she's been with black men and knows like, and it's, sometimes they try to make it like it's just about, the dick, and that's where I, take my prompt to just do my thing to really groom them to understand it's not. It's all the way down to the genetics of melanin
Hmm.
supremacy, but that's, the other thing. Versus these guys that approach me, and instead of really trying to be like, I understand black supremacy and I should serve it, I deserve to be a servant only, they try to come with this like, I want my wife to be taken by a black thug, and
Hmm.
like there's, nothing I can do about it type of, like it's just
Yeah, yeah.
interesting to me how different those two, and they could both
Yep.
be racist. They could both be actively not racist in their, like, I don't know, because I only know what they tell me. And I'll tell you right now, disclaimer, I don't trust a single word any of you gooner mother effers say. If you say you're a virgin, I'm convinced you're married and been married 3 times. If you say that you're married, I'm convinced you've never touched a vagina. Like, that's just where I'm at. I think you're all a bunch of liars. So I don't,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
ask for a task or
I don't
something like
blame you.
that, it's
I
because
don't
I'm
blame you.
getting receipts of some
And I,
kind. Like, I'm not going off of anybody's word. But it's just
oh yeah.
it's just I wanted to know about the alpha cuck thing. I was curious. That was like, we don't have to talk about it just yet necessarily, but I don't want to forget. I wanted to ask you if you deal with these,
No,
alpha cucks that act like they're in charge of you, they're running the scene, they're in charge of wifey,
no.
or
That's the
if you
latter
don't
for
you
me. I
don't
don't let
let
that
that be your
be the interaction.
interaction,
I
so
have never
therefore
even
you
been
don't.
approached with
I'm
that
just
because
curious.
I'm likely giving off energy
Mm-hmm.
that's not. Don't come to me with that.
Good.
Um,
It's garbage.
but like you said at the
Right.
top of this, I'm not kink shaming.
Don't even bother.
If there's black men that want to be in a room with an alpha cuck, I haven't even come across that in 20 years. So, but that might be the vibe I'm giving off is don't bring
What
me
do you
that
think?
nonsense. It probably is. I probably is.
I
It's going
assumed
on
it was a
somewhere right
fantasy,
now. You
so,
know what I'm saying? It's just
that's where
not with
I
us.
stand.
But just like you said, I don't want some white guy telling me to use the N word.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in a cuck
that's the real
that's
fantasy.
trying to flip that cuck thing on me and be an
Mm,
alpha. Like, no,
mm,
sit down, boy. You're never the alpha when I'm in the room. You're not the alpha when I'm not in the room. Like,
mhm.
like,
Right.
so it's that's never happened. But that's an interesting
Right,
thing.
that part.
I've never even thought
Yes.
about that, to be honest with you. But I'm sure there's people who want to do that. A lot of cuckoldresses talk about their cucks topping from the bottom, and yeah, and that's also a really interesting
Oh,
subject when
yeah.
it comes to
Any
race
dom will
play.
tell you about that
And
crap.
this will be a subject for another time. I think this is a whole episode. But one of the things that's fascinating to me is the question of who's really in charge. Because we know optically, if you were to take a photograph, well, clearly that black bull
Mhm,
is very dominant. Clearly the woman is as equally dominant or more in charge in the room than even he is. And the cuck, that white husband, is clearly the submissive. But the
mhm.
photograph could be lying. What really could be going on in that room is that white guy, and often is the case, just talk to cuckoldresses. The white guy is driving everything. He looks submissive, but that's because that's what he wants. He's acting submissive because that's what's
Mhm,
turning him on. She's being dominant because he's
mhm,
pushing her to dominate him because, again, it's about him, him,
mhm.
him, him, him. So that is one of the more fascinating things. And I know a lot of black bulls are going to be like, oh,
Yes.
earmuffs, I don't want to hear this shit. I just want to enjoy it. Don't tell me that the white guy's in charge. But that is one of the psychologically interesting things here is how much is the white guy, even when he's on his knees with a cage on his dick and maybe one in his mouth, how much is he still in charge? That is interesting. You know? Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
Yep.
Because, yeah, it ties back to, like we're saying, the power dynamics and how do they really shift, in these, race play scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the, no matter what, he goes back out into society and he's a privileged white male, which is why, I think I've commented on this before, that I think it's, just, it's annoying, to be honest, how the influx of QoS findoms, and on one hand,
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot more of them doing this with their black boyfriend or husband or whatever else. Like instead of it being a white couple, it is a white woman, or any woman really, but typically a white woman with a black king doing it together, dominating the cucks together, etc. Because that way, and that's, that's my lifestyle. That
Mm-hmm.
in that way, I'm allowing the cuck to come be useful. I'm using his energy, his presence
Mm-hmm.
to benefit our pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
our experience, me and the Black Kings, in some capacity, because he's not my husband. I owe him nothing. He is a BDSM play type, submissive to my dominant, where he would not get to be there unless he had done something to earn the position of being there, versus we're only doing this
Mm-hmm.
because I got my wife into it. So I could shut it down at any time. It's like a completely different, in my opinion, like, again, am I making content for a mostly
Mm-hmm.
white male audience? Because, well, I give away my content for free to Black Kings. So, I mean, either way, I wouldn't take their money, but white males are paying for my content, but I'm still making sure
Mm-hmm.
they understand, like, you're the
Mm-hmm.
one who doesn't matter in this dynamic. You have to make yourself matter. And that was the whole with the alpha cuck thing. When a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes when I talk to these guys that are really in a real relationship, maybe they go to Splash Smoke or they go
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever, they really are. And they know that they are in control. And that's when I say the alpha cuck, that they're choosing to be, because at the end of the day, when you are a submissive in any, race play or
Sure.
non-race play dynamic, you are in control because you're the one who says when we stop, like,
Yeah.
because it's consensual. So red, hard line, stop, hard limit, whatever. So that's why the submissive is, at the end of the day, allowing, things to happen. Now, that's the gray area I say a little bit is when you're deep in subspace, like if you are the type of person who engages with that subby part of your sexuality and these,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
will say yes to things that you didn't think you were going to say yes to, right? Like, so, and that's, so there's that part that I like to play with, obviously. And then there's also just the whole, if you're going to leave this room and go back to being a privileged white male, you're going to do something to make yourself more of an ally, or make yourself more educated, or make yourself the person in the family that speaks up on shit. Like, you're going to do something, or you're going to find black superiors in your neighborhood, area, community, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, that you assist with something, whether it's, community work, community involvement,
Yeah.
whether it's literally, a little more kinky and you're like cleaning their house in a maid outfit. Like, you're going to do something useful. Go hit, your black neighbor's car washed or something. Like, literally just, that's the only difference that you can make, is like try to bring some of that energy into their lifestyle and make them more useful than just a, potentially porn addicted guy, just talking to a dom online buying content, or somebody in a relationship where they think because they're offering their, permission for their wife to sleep
Mm-hmm.
with a black man, that what, her body is
Mm-hmm.
reparations. Like, her body is not yours to provide.
Mm-hmm.
She will do whatever she wants, either behind your back or in front of you or with or without you, but it's very, very interesting that you bring that up, because it's so true about
Yeah.
the submissive
Would
in
you
these
say that that's
dynamics. Like, they're
part of
giving
like what makes
consent, they're giving
this might
permission,
just kind of be a no-brainer, but it's interesting to me your approach that most people just don't put that level of effort into it, or they don't add that on. They let the guy goon and do his thing, but then when you click stop, and you're away from him, there's no, you know, I'll use the word homework. There's no, like, after you leave here, don't forget this experience and take it out into the real world.
hmm
Was it
hmm
difficult for you to add that on? Did you have a hard time finding people at first that were like wanting to do that, or or do you think that no, actually, because I have such a unique brand, I get the guy who wants to do the homework. Like, that's the people who come to you. Is that what you found?
yes, Yes. Yeah, so there's a few things there. One, I literally attract guys that
Okay.
want to have more realistic
Hmm.
conversations about what they see playing out in politics, what they see playing out in,
Hmm.
what they're showing on the media versus what they actually experience in their community, or what they're noticing in the media, or like they want to have like these actual conversations. And maybe it is titillating for them in some way and it does turn them on and they're curious about that, but they are not just like coming on
Interesting.
the phone like in goon mode to talk about something purely, sexual in nature. I get that all the time. And I would say a lot of my big, like, and this, I'll lead into this other thing. A lot of
Right.
my top
Right.
payers over the years have been these guys that genuinely want to pick my brain, want to, what is your opinion on this, that's happening? What
Hmm.
is your opinion on Trump? What is your opinion on, should Americans pay reparations? Like, which is interesting because I don't offer my take on Black issues very often because I feel like that's like,
Hmm.
I don't like when white people are gaining views off of discussing their opinion on issues in the Black community because nobody asked you, Karen. And like, unless you're trying to like, because I always think about
Hmm.
the scene in the Malcolm X movie, which I'm sure really based on fact, but like this white girl running up to Malcolm X and being like, "Oh,
Hmm.
I've read your writings and
Yeah.
I want to help and what can I do to help and what can I do?" And he said
Right.
literally nothing. It was like, this is our issue. This is our like I can't
Yeah.
let you
Yeah.
be the one that helped. Like I can't rely on you.
Hmm.
You're over there. Like you benefit from a system that I need to freaking abolish. Like all of that. So I'm just very aware that I can influence my submissives, and I do attract submissives that are looking to
Mm.
like I have submissives that come to me and they're like, "Did you read this book? I thought it was something you would like."
Yeah.
Like, or did you see this
Yeah.
documentary? I'd love to talk to you about it. Like that's like real conversations that I have on Sex
That's
Panther.
amazing.
So like it's very, it's and I will also say this as a content creator in the realm of race play, interracial content, humiliation content, cuckolding content, BBC as a general concept. I could easily go the full, just as cliche as possible, gooner content route and make, make a bunch of money and then put it toward, Black owned businesses. Like I already make my Cucks Buy Me gifts and support Black content creators and Black owned businesses and everything. I could spend less time trying to get them to do it themselves for me. And I could just
Hmm.
be super cliche, but use the money in a way that I think is, helpful, donate charity, don't like I said, by, supporting Black owned businesses. Like there are two different ways to go about it, but I feel a lot more validated to see my power as a
Hmm.
dominant that is able to get her submissives to take on lifestyle, make lifestyle changes and actually use their energy and their this drive they have to like be connected with this obsession they kind of have with Black men to like be on the road to becoming allies in some capacity, or
Yeah.
at least be more useful, or at least make sure that
That's
their money
beautiful.
is going toward Black business, stuff like that. Like I'm proud of people to have that, and I hope a lot more women do that with their power as a white woman online, and how at the end of the day
Yeah.
how easy it is to get
I
paid
have to
if you
say
are a
that,
white woman online. It's just
in
if
terms
you
of
actually care
timing,
about
I don't know
it,
if we're nearing like closing thoughts, but one of mine is just this whole conversation and how you just kind of wrapped up what you do. This is exactly probably one of the paramount examples I can think of what we were talking about at the top, about how race play can heal, how race play can teach you how to live in a different way, how it can teach you to like reach across the aisle, how it can teach you to understand not only the other person racially in the room, but also about yourself and like what your issues are, the ugliness inside you. It allows you to put a mirror up to it. And what you're doing is that like writ large. You're doing that in a way where it's not just while I'm gooning. It's like you said, a lot of times you're fully clothed, talking about politics and books and things that you've read. These people are paying you to figure their shit out. You know, they're like saying, like, instead of this therapist, how about I hit up Lady Anaconda this week and give her that money?
Mhm.
And I think they really are. They're working through some major stuff that a lot of people never look at. They just say, oh, I'm not racist or I don't have any issues. These people are doing the work with you in a way that's actually pleasurable, titillating, all that, but also has real world implications. They go out and they do things. They're now thinking differently. They're carrying that with them. So I just have to say, like, what you just described to me, everybody's not going to do what you do. I don't do what you do. I do a lighter version of this in the lifestyle. But I have to give major props to what I'm hearing from you and what you're doing. You're putting out good in the world through something that people often dismiss as just content, porn, triple X, you know? And I'm sorry, what you're doing is much more than that. It has many more facets to the diamond. And it's a beautiful thing to hear that these people are hitting you up and they're working through things with you that they, frankly, probably wouldn't anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a woman years ago who sold nudes to raise money for
Okay.
the wildfire issue, like the really bad wildfires in Australia. And I was just like, women are not doing it
Yeah.
big enough sometimes that, like, we really, you can, when it comes to, having a dominant energy or having a talent or just, being comfortable with your sexuality, like people want to judge sex workers
Yeah.
for a number of reasons. But one of the most basic things is
Mm-hmm.
just, I can't believe your body's out there. I can't believe you're naked and you're showing pictures of your body. I'm like,
Exactly.
really? With what's going on in the world, you're worried about me showing some nipple? Seriously? And like, or like, even like, the fact that he's like,
Exactly.
I'll
Yeah.
censor my naked, like, it's censored. They only deserve pixels anyway. Like, and this still just makes some people, they're still so like conditioned, to just like not see it for the bigger picture it is of, like, there's a demand for this. At least I'm trying to put something out
Mm-hmm.
there that's a
Mm-hmm.
product I can feel a little bit better about than the usual, and show that anybody can use their platform to make a difference in whatever it is they care about. And you could be mad at my methods if they really make you uncomfortable, but like, just think about like how pathetic it is that you're putting nudity
Yeah.
stresses you out more than like the senseless violence that we see just perpetuating in this culture
Mm-hmm.
because of these
Yeah.
like some angry white guys. Like, they are so mad. And it's like, I'm sorry if you're fumbling the
Yeah. It's still
bag
pissed.
in a society
Yeah.
built around uplifting you. But
Yeah.
God,
Yeah. No, you're
sounds
absolutely
like a
right.
you problem, first of
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Like, I'm on top and I'm
So,
still bad.
like,
Yeah.
I don't care,
But
man.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, like, you're shooting up everybody. Like, wow, like, I get that your guns
Mm-hmm.
are dick and they are the only thing that make you feel like you have a
Yeah.
phallus
Yeah.
worth
That's
bragging
also a
about. But
uniquely
like,
American thing.
dude, sit down. Like, how
Yeah. That is definitely
if someone
also
kids that are
uniquely
you, maybe you'd
American
be
is
happier.
guns
Like,
and
God,
violence is okay.
you know?
But Lady A's
Crazy.
nipple out there
Yeah, right.
is bothering me.
The
Yeah.
Glock
Yeah. Yeah.
3000 is making them
Yeah.
more
You're,
uncomfortable than like bodies in the street. And
yeah.
it's like, I'm gonna Hakta and Gluck all I want, and you can be upset about it if you want to, but I'm also capable of having
Yeah.
intelligent
Yeah.
conversations, and you
No,
can't do either
absolutely,
thing.
man.
You're
It's
not doing
like,
either
yeah.
thing, so whatever. You're not getting
I hear
pussy,
you.
and you
Yeah.
can't have an
That
intellectual
reminds me of
conversation or debate. So what
one
are
of my
you doing
favorites
that is
comedians,
benefiting
Wanda
anybody?
Sykes. She
Go
was like,
away. I don't
y'all
care.
worried about trans people reading books to kids in schools, but unless a trans person kills 30 kids with a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, I think you focused on the wrong thing.
Mhm.
What
Right.
the, but yeah, what is happening right now?
I think
That's a
you're
problem.
missing the
Yeah,
basic
so
issue
that, no, I'm
here.
with you, man. But
Like,
it's
oh
beautiful. It's
my,
beautiful to hear what you
the
do and
real
how you do it.
problem.
And I can't wait to talk to you more
Yeah.
about this as time goes on.
Ooh.
Like, as we delve into these topics, we're going to be getting into stuff that pops up in pop culture, things around race and sex, and we're going to discuss those. Some of them will be tragic, some of them will be fun.
Hmm.
And we're going to like keep going with this and also bring other people on, right? people that have different experiences. We're going to get into the BNWO and what that is.
Yeah, big time.
I plan to bring on some lifestyle friends of mine that are heavily into interracial. I want to talk to you about one of the things that I'm making forays into
Love it.
recently is interracial sex magic, which is a subject that most people are like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Is that some Harry Potter shit? Like what? But
Oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah, you told me
yeah,
about
so we
that.
got a
Oh,
lot
please, at
on the
length,
horizon for the
spare no
listeners,
detail
but I
type
think
of
this was a
episode,
great
you
way to
know?
start off. Just give an overview of who we are, what we do, and what we're going to be talking about on Racy.
100%. Yeah, there's just, there's more doms, black doms specifically, these
Hmm.
beautiful, amazing,
Yeah,
powerful women that are like really
yeah,
leaning into the pay me
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
reparations, you white, foot freak or whatever caged little bitch. Like, and it
Yeah,
just makes me, I love to see it. I can't even tell you that. Talk about things that
a
make me
hundred
wet. It
percent.
is just amazing. And
Yeah,
I love it. Black women deserve a soft, luxurious,
yeah.
pampered, empowered existence. And
I
I'm
love it.
definitely gonna bring on some doms, some fin doms that like love this shit in their own right, and
Oh
and
yes,
also people that hate it, and just give them a chance to like kind of work out, because we gotta delve into the language more. There's a lot of people that just don't even understand why I would use such a problematic term
sure.
as QoS, and I've gotten so many different viewpoints on that over the years. So I definitely want some people on that have different opinions on that. So, definitely really, I'm really excited, and I feel again so privileged, Pagan, to have you here to, bring your very unique, very, well, like articulated position and experiences and perspectives on all things race play. And I'm really excited, and everybody's going to learn a lot. And I look forward to seeing what people get out of this and seeing what I learn from it. And
Yeah, we're going to put
I'm going to be
ourselves
put
on
on
the
the
hot
hot seat
seat. That whole
sometimes,
thing you
I'm
just said
sure,
about
and I
having
welcome it. And
disagreements or people that
yeah.
disagree with us and giving them voice, I love that about you. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you. I don't want to be in
Hmm.
an echo chamber of just, oh, yes, you're beautiful. Every thought you have is right. I love the idea of having a discussion because this is something that has
Absolutely.
many different facets to it. I can't wait for all of it. And what you said about the Black Queens, there are so many Black women that don't really know or see their place in this interracial lifestyle or in the area of race play. And I would love
Hmm.
to put out those voices of those Black queens that are not only actively doing it, but they're taking control of their own destiny. That is something I can't wait to do because their voices just frankly aren't featured enough when you go online and just in general when it's around, like we said, the porn and all that. They're not promoting Black women. It's about the white male fantasy or the Black male fantasy, but it's not about what the women, Black women, are doing in especially in the BNWO world that you're talking about, and how they are really taking control. So I can't wait for all of that. Lady A, this was a pleasure,
Hmm.
and I can't wait for the next one, man. Let's get racy.
Let's get racy. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you endlessly to my amazing co-host Pagan. I'm looking forward to many more conversations in the future. And everybody, just make sure you are subscribed to my channel, Elite QoS Movement, because every episode of Racy will be right here. So stay tuned. Lots more to come.